Mr. Jan to Horst's home on Moran Street in Beaconsfield. It's in the Fremantle electorate. And Mr. de Horst, for the past 25 years, has an incredible experience. We're going to talk to Mr. de Horst extensively about his experiences and in particular about the corruption that can happen from our politicians and local councils and judges. Do you just want to say a few words, Mr. de Horst, about your vehicle and your house?
Yes, well, I've been doing this for about 25 years, and it is a monumental scandal, a cover-up by the system of WA, especially local government, Landgate, the courts. I've had about 16 lawyers and QCs taking $300,000 of me, and I've been vindicated, but I still can't get compensation or an apology.
And you were thrown in jail by a judge?
I was jailed for life for an indefinite period, and whilst I was in jail they created the fake titles and fake transfers. After they had the titles and the transfers, I was released from jail, and the people building on my land took my fake titles to the bank, Westpac, and borrowed money on $143,000 and completed the building, and then sold it to somebody else, and they went back to England.
And have we got the names of these people?
Oh yes, one of them is Bruce Jonathan Islets, local builder. Yeah.
And Bruce Jonathan Islets, has he escaped to the United Kingdom, has he?
He's gone back to England after he sold the building, and on one occasion he smashed all my windows.
Of this house?
Yes, and he got fined $2,000. He should have been put in jail, but in WA they only seem to be jailing innocent people.
So you're fighting for the rights of your property. This is about your property rights.
That's right.
And you're fighting for your rights of your own property in Western Australia, and in particular in regards to an ocean view.
That's correct.
And essentially the authorities made you suffer for 25 years.
Yes, that's right.
Now that judge that threw you in jail, what was the reason that he threw you in jail?
Because I refused to surrender the title to the property, because what they built on my land is illegal. It doesn't conform with planning approval, and it doesn't conform with the strata plan with the height restriction.
So the height restriction was how...
the condition on the strata plan.
The condition on the strata plan, and they built how high over the restriction?
Well, instead of excavating, they dumped 25 truckloads of sand on my property without my consent.
Yeah.
And then the council gave him, when the building went over the height restriction, the council gave him retrospective planning approval, which could only be applied for by me because the original planning approval was in my name.
And the people that did the building, the title was in whose name?
The builder by the name was Joe Conway.
The house in question, the house in front of you.
The system created two titles.
Yeah.
One for me and one for the bottom property.
Yeah.
The person that now lives there is Mr. Thompson.
Yeah.
And I believe he is a relation, he or she is a relation to Richard Utting, the criminal lawyer, who attacked me on ABC radio whilst I was in jail.
While you were in jail, what cowards!
And I got the transcript from the ABC.
Yeah, and the judge put you in jail for you wouldn't hand over a duplicate copy of the title. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I was in contempt of court.
So he jailed you for contempt of court for life, 25 years.
Yeah, for an indefinite period.
Indefinite period for disagreeing with the judge and not wanting to hand over a piece of paper.
That's correct.
And then how long did you actually serve?
Well, I went on a hunger strike, and after they created the fake titles and the fake transfers, they released me from jail after 91 days.
91 days. So a judge, because you disagreed with a judge and wouldn't hand over a document, he jailed you for life.
That's right.
Which is absolutely cruel to do that to somebody. How cruel!
Yeah.
And then you went.
I've never committed a crime.
And then you appealed and you fought and you went on a hunger strike and you were released after 91 days.
That's correct.
You know, these judges throwing Australian citizens in jail, I don't think they have a clue what it's like in there, do they?
Well,
what was it like? Which jail were you in?
I was in Casuarina, I was in Wooroloo, I was in Canning Vale, and I was in the one in the hills. What's the name?
And Mr. Horst is fighting for his rights, own property rights, and he's thrown in jail by a judge. And yeah, they're actually trying to do the same thing to me now. The Fremantle Council wants to prosecute me over having signs on my front fence in my house in Hilton for promoting democracy and freedom for the Australian people. So they're going to try and do the same thing to me. They don't respect citizens, they don't respect their property rights, and they don't respect people's rights to democracy and freedom of speech either in Australia. In terms of the politicians and the judges crucifying their own citizens.
Yeah, well, during the mediation with the Fremantle Council, they took me to court 25 times, and I was found guilty and fined $400 and $4,500 for legal fees. And my lawyer, who only attended the court 3 times, sent me a bill for $14,000.
And who did this to you?
That was John Hammond.
And who was John Hammond?
He's a lawyer.
Oh, your lawyer?
Yeah.
But the people that prosecuted, that was the Fremantle Council, is that correct?
Fremantle Council, yes.
So they prosecuted you over this issue, took you to court to what, 25 times?
25 times.
Yeah.
And the house has been heritage listed.
This house has been heritage listed. We're going to get another shot of this house.
It's not heritage, but they heritage listed it.
Yeah.
And on the heritage document it states that the political signage are of significance to the heritage of the building.
Well, there you go. This is a...
The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Alright, but what that means is that the political signage Mr. Horst is saying is of historical significance to this house on Moran Street in Beaconsfield, because it's about the rights of a man to fighting for his rights as a citizen and his rights in relation to his property rights.
That's correct.
So that's what it's about.
Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. Democratic values.
Freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression. Alright, we've got documents that other people have legislation where freedom of expression, freedom of speech is protected in some legislation, but not enough in the Constitution, though, is Australian Constitution. Would you be in support of a Bill of Rights, Mr. Horst?
I'm sure, yes.
Yes, I think we do. Australia needs a Bill of Rights for its citizens, because the government hammers the citizens of of Australia and Western Australia. The politicians, the judges, the councils. It's like communism. It's like communism, and evidence of that is what they've been doing to the Aboriginal people for the last 200 years as well, throwing them in jail.
That's correct.
For 200 years. Would you agree with that, Mr. Horst?
I agree with it.
Yeah, they just throw them in jail, and they have too much power in terms of the citizen, eroding the rights of citizens, eroding the freedoms of citizens, and Australia needs a Bill of Rights for its citizens, because the local councils and the politicians and the judges can just destroy us so easily. And here's the perfect evidence of it. This is just absolute evidence of.
Well, the interesting thing is that the Strata Plan comes under the Strata Titles Act This is an Act of Parliament. It is statute law of Parliament, which was the primary instrument to the development of my lands. You cannot ignore statute law of Parliament. But the judges did. The judges ignored my strata plan, which is under statute law of Parliament. And
Yeah.
it should override a contract or anything else.
Of course it does. They did the same thing to me as well. As a teacher, also, my brother David, the statutory human rights I pointed out to the Supreme Court judges, and they totally ignored it. And they even lied in the document and said that.
Well, I did ask Professor of
And
Law.
said that I hadn't used a legal basis. But,
I did
sorry.
ask Professor of Law, David Malcolm. I said, there is a contract and there is a strata plan. And I said, the strata plan is statute law, the contract is common law. Which one overrides which? And he told me in uncertain terms that statute law overrides the contract.
Of course it does, because it's a statutory act in force. It's an act in force.
That strata plan under statute law was supposed to have protected me.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
Okay.
The judges completely ignored statute law of Parliament.
So the statute law and also the contract of strata, the strata plan, yeah, the two forms of protection for you, and they weren't upheld.
That's right.
And instead what they did, they threw you in jail.
That's correct.
You know, they're going to be judged and accountable for that. There's no question about it.
And in the contract it states, I must give them the title when the building is completed.
Yeah.
But the building must conform with planning approval, and it must conform with the strata plan and the height restriction. It did not conform with the planning approval, it did not conform with the strata plan, therefore I refused to give them the title.
Yeah.
They were not entitled to the title until the building was completed.
That's right, and there's a list of a huge list of professional people who've supported your position as well over the years, isn't there?
Well, I've got 30, 40, 50 people, professional people that have supported me over the years, and they all agree that there has been a miscarriage of justice, a travesty of justice. Politicians are saying it. Everybody else is saying it. All the professionals are saying it.
But you haven't received any compensation or anything like that?
No compensation, no public apology.
And that makes me also question our judicial system. As an experienced teacher, I can see enormous problems in our judicial system in a sense that the citizen is at the mercy of one person, one judge or one magistrate, a human judge and human magistrate, who essentially makes their own decisions and own rules, and doesn't rule on legislation. In some of the cases that I've looked at and had experience with. Well, so why should the people be subject to one person, one judge or one magistrate, and at their mercy? And I don't believe that's right. That I think under the Commonwealth Constitution of Australia, that if there's a case where indictable offence, then the person is entitled to a jury, and that doesn't happen. The fact that a single judge could throw you in jail for fighting for your rights based on no statutory act. He didn't put you in jail under any statutory act necessarily, did he? Or contempt of court, but it's disgusting that one human judge, who's going to be judged by God and Jesus, can actually throw a citizen in jail without you having your peers there, without having witnesses, without having other people there.
Yes, but I also blame my barrister QC, who failed to check the contract properly and failed to check the statute law properly. He's now a judge.
And who's that?
Michael O'Sullivan.
Yeah, well, they all just...
He was my barrister. He told me, I told him that we need more work done on the case.
Yeah.
We need more investigation. He said, don't worry about it. I remain reasonably confident of success in any event. Just make sure that the $10,000 is there on Monday morning, or I'll drop the case.
And he wasn't successful?
No.
And he allowed you to suffer and go to jail?
And he wrote me a letter. He said, I'm reasonably confident of success in any event.
And we're going to have a look at that letter later.
Yeah.
But, you know, these judges are just a boys' club, and they do what they want. And I've got evidence of Supreme Court judges' corruption, lying black and white in court in judgement transcripts, and they just do what they want. The two groups of people in our society, in any country in the world, who are susceptible to corruption are politicians and judges. And that is what the Triple C should be monitoring. Here we are with Mr. Jan ter Horst, and Mr. ter Horst is the constituent in the Fremantle electorate. He lives in Beaconsfield, and we're going to continue his story or his experience over the past 25 years with politicians, judges and the Fremantle Council. I would like to start by saying that this is a copy of the Constitution of Australia, the Australian Commonwealth Constitution. From Federation, that Constitution was I have a letter to a citizen from Robert McClellan, who is the Attorney General, Federal Attorney General of Australia. And this letter is dated the 8th of July 2010. And Robert McClellan says, who is a politician, he's the Federal Attorney General, says to the citizen, I refer to your letter received on the 10th of June 2010 regarding the 1988 referendum. In 1988, 4 proposals to amend the Constitution were put to voters in accordance with section 128 of the Australian Commonwealth Constitution. One of those proposals sought to give constitutional recognition to local government, but the proposal was not carried. The Constitution does not currently recognise local government. Any change to the Constitution to recognise local government would need to be approved by voters at a referendum. In other words, our Constitution in Australia does not recognise local government. And a letter, evidence, Robert McClellan, Attorney General of Australia, Federal Attorney General, dated 8th of July 2010. Yet the councils throughout Australia can crucify its citizens with rates, fees, fines and charges and tell us what to do in our properties. Bully citizens who own their own properties, and in the same regard, Fremantle Council, on 17 city sites in the heart of Fremantle, approved buildings of 5-storey buildings against the community's wishes, well, their desires, their objection. They objected, the community objected, but despite that you said, no, it's fine, we're going to go ahead, allowing multi-storey dwellings, 5-storey dwellings on 17 city sites, yet you harass individual people in their homes, who own their homes, who pay rates. And the Commonwealth Constitution doesn't even recognise you to charge rates and to oppress citizens. And increasingly, the rates going up and up and up and up in Australia throughout the whole country. Now, Mr. ter Horst has had an extraordinary life, and I'm going to ask Mr. ter Horst to talk to the people of Australia about your experiences further.
Yes, hi. Originally I come from Holland. So I was born in Amsterdam, lived there during the war, survived the war. I then moved to Zeeland, Vlissingen. I was involved there in the flood disaster in 1953, finished up in the freezing water. I then had to do my military service in 1957. And during my military service, my mother passed away, the family split up, and I finished up in Australia. So I've survived the Second World War, and I survived the flood disaster in Zeeland. I am now fighting World War III in Australia.
When did you come to Australia? What year?
I came to Australia in 1960. So I've been here 52 years, so I think I should give me rights.
And you have been a citizen for that long? You
30, 40 years,
okay, so
maybe 40 years.
So you are an Australian citizen?
I'm an Australian citizen. I've also lived in New Zealand, in Christchurch. By profession I'm a pastry cook, retired from pastry cooking in 1980. I've always been self-employed. I then became an antique dealer, and after my jailing I become a whistleblower, exposing all the corruption here. I've never been in trouble with the law until I subdivided my property.
And from my perspective, you know, people talk about whistleblowers or whatever, but in reality, the reality of what you're doing and is articulating for your rights and freedoms as a citizen, essentially, but also for the rights and freedoms of other citizens. And I'm doing that as well. I'm building a political party, and now the Fremantle Council wants to prosecute me for promoting democracy and freedom in Australia for Australian citizens.
Yes, so, see, I do a lot of reading. I read the newspapers every day, I watch the news every day. What they've done to me over the past 24 years, 25 years, I feel I live in China or in Russia.
It's like communism.
Not in Australia.
Yeah, it's like communism.
I have no rights.
Yeah, as a citizen.
I feel I don't want to be an Australian citizen anymore. I feel I should have kept my Dutch nationality. I could have gone to the European courts for justice, because I can't get justice in WA. I do have a letter from the High Court stating that in cases such as yours, you can appeal to the High Court. This letter was sent to me by Justice Kirby.
You got that letter there?
No.
It's in here, isn't it?
No, I've got it here somewhere.
Okay.
But going to the High Court, I've already spent $300,000 on local lawyers who let me down, were now totally negligent and incompetent, and to go to the High Court will cost me another $150,000, which I don't have. So I'm desperately in need of a pro bono lawyer.
And that makes me question our judicial system in a sense that does it give access to citizens, generally speaking? Do you think?
I'm sorry?
Does our court system or judicial system give access to citizens? Do citizens find it easy to go to the court to appeal for justice? Do you think it's an easy process?
Well, the lawyers have done it all for me.
You need a lot of money, don't you?
Oh, yes.
If a citizen doesn't have any money,
yes.
Are they able to
no,
get
justice?
See,
because this is a civil case, and civil cases, it's very hard to get legal aid or pro bono lawyers. If I was a criminal, I would get legal aid. But not in civil cases.
Well, I conducted a civil case in the district court and did it myself because of the very reason that, I contracted 2 law firms, but I paid thousands of dollars for them to tell me that they couldn't help me.
Yeah.
And in the end, as a teacher, I did the case myself and fought the state solicitor's office and had some success. But that's the point. Unless you're educated and intelligent to do it yourself, you have to have a lot of money to then be able to, and most people don't have that.
Exactly.
Sort of money.
Well, I've lost $300,000 already.
$300,000 for fighting for his property rights, you know. Mr. Horst has spent, as he said, $300,000 just fighting for his civil rights, property rights, without any justice really. And he's got a lot of significant documents, and he's put together a number of...
this is my...
Let's start with this one here.
Well, this is a document that I've created by myself, and it starts with, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. This is by Sir Walter Scott, 1771, 1832. Fremantle City Council has done everything within their power over a period of the last 20 years, 25 years, to deny me natural justice. It's cover-up, maladministration, lying under oath, falsifying strata documents stating that the building is consistent, which it isn't, intimidation by police, harassment by police, as a result of the Fremantle Council corruption, I've lost my ocean view, I've lost my land, I've lost all my money to the lawyers, 300,000, I've lost my family, I've lost my business, I lost my freedom and was jailed for an indefinite period for contempt of court. Jan de Horst, after the court cases, was vindicated by a local government inquiry.
Just put the date there.
In November 2001.
November 2001.
Yeah, by the Lush inquiry, local government inquiry.
Lush Independent Local Government Inquiry.
Inquiry, yeah.
Yeah.
The report stated that the council made decisions on inaccurate information.
Did you want me to read that?
And there's also a parliamentary website, www.parliament, WA government, committees and inquiries.
Do you want me to read that bit? Ian Lush Independent Inquiry Report criticises Fremantle Council's dealings with long-time critic Jan de Horst, saying it made decisions based on inaccurate information. Mr. de Horst demands a public apology and compensation. Alright, now.
I here have a drawing which I prepared in Carnet Prison in '95. This shows you my property, this one, that one, and this is what I sold, and it's supposed to have a height restriction from here, but because of the illegal sand fill here, the building went 650 mil, 65 centimetres over the strata height restriction. All this was done without my consent.
And that was done while you were in prison. They did that to that property. The property is there, and you were in jail, and they did all these activities behind your back.
That's right, including stealing my electricity from my house while I was in jail. And my wife came here to water the garden and got electrocuted.
Did she?
Because the cables were under the ground into his property down the bottom of Mr. Eilert. Yeah, this is.
What else did they do while you were in jail?
Oh, they trespassed. They removed all my signs. Yeah. They broken all my windows. I had $3,000 or $4,000 damage. All those windows.
Who broke your windows?
Mr. Bruce Jonathan Eilert. He was convicted in the courts. He was fined $2,000, and the judge said, "You can go and do whatever you like. Go back to England."
Yeah, and they threw you in jail, and
I was
they
in
let
jail.
him go free.
Yeah. He smashed all those windows.
And he smashed your property windows.
All the windows had to be replaced, and all the curtains were damaged because of the broken glass.
Yeah.
All the rails and the top, everything had to be replaced. Now this is
how corrupt are they?
This is a Leela engineering report. This report shows what should have been done and what they did. Now, if they would have excavated, there would have been no problem, because the planning approval states existing ground level to be used. They did not excavate. They dumped 25 truckloads of sand on my property, and the building went, of course, 650 mil, 65 centimetres over the strata height restriction, which is more than a half a metre. And the difference, what they did and should have done, was $440.
So just some simple engineering and building factors caused basically this, really, in a sense.
For $440, they totally destroyed my life. So you got A and B.
Yeah.
What they did and what they should have done.
So that's for, what's the 440?
Well, that's the difference between those two amounts.
Oh, okay.
What they should have done, spent.
Oh, to spend on
the money.
Excavating
and the sand fill.
They should have done that too.
That's right. Now this is a letter. This is a letter from John Giudice. John Giudice was my surveyor. I engaged him. I told him I wanted to dispose of the bottom block. By the way, my block is on a hill. I live on the top, and I sold the two bottom levels.
You had a nice view, by the way. It's very
I had the best views in Fremantle, and I told my surveyor I want to retain my ocean view from the bottom level of my property, the downstairs level. He said, Mr. de Horst, that's no problem. I will prepare the strata plan. I will put a height restriction on the new building,
Yep.
which is 1 metre from the ground slab of your building.
Yep.
And there's going to be a flat roof on the new building.
So that was specified before the building.
Yes.
With the surveyor.
Yeah.
And in writing.
In writing.
In writing.
Yeah. On the strata plan.
On the strata plan, yeah.
So there was a 1 metre height restriction. There was a flat roof condition. If you've got to have a height restriction, you've got to have a flat roof condition. I got the flat roof condition, but I did not get the height restriction. So in other words, I've lost my ocean view. Now, before he died, before John Judici, my surveyor, died, he wrote me this letter. Jan, this is the only correspondence that I have. I am aware of your situation, and I agree that you have been badly treated, and I'm very sorry for the position you are in, etc., etc. Anyway.
And who is that from?
My surveyor, who prepared the strata plan with the height restriction.
Yeah.
Now, my case went to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman investigated the case. The investigator was an ex-employee of the Fremantle Council.
Oh yeah, well that's a conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. Her name was Miss Stevenson, and they agreed, the building inspector from the Fremantle Council, Nino Monaco, lied about the illegal sandfill. He said there was no illegal sandfill. The Ombudsman, Miss Stevenson, the investigator, investigated it. The Ombudsman wrote in his report, it seems to me that the building inspector is wrong.
Yeah.
In other words, he lied about the illegal sandfill.
Yeah.
Now, then the Ombudsman wrote to me, Fremantle Council has now changed its policies of requiring a building to be built to plate height on a proposed strata lot before being prepared to issue its certificate to allow its registration of a strata plan, and has made changes to some of its processes in the building service section. As I understand it, planning approval of the building license have been issued for the completion of the partially erected building on the site, and the construction is expected to commence in the near future. So here we got a building inspector lying to the Ombudsman. We got an investigator who is a legal employee from the Fremantle Council, and here we got the Ombudsman stating that the Fremantle Council has now changed all its policies and no longer requires a building to be built first before they are prepared to sign off on the strata plan. See, the strata plan should have been signed off by the Fremantle Council prior to building.
Yeah.
But the council had an in-house policy, an office policy, that you had to build the building first, and when the building is plate height, which it is now, then they will give you a certificate for a vacant strata lot.
What's the point of that?
Now, when there is a building on my land, the council then gives me a certificate for a vacant strata lot. That doesn't make sense.
No.
Because it is no longer a vacant strata lot. Council should have signed off. Council should have signed off on the strata plan when it was a vacant strata lot.
They just don't know what they're doing, do they?
Exactly.
The other thing is, I think strata complexes are, cause conflict with people. People should just have single title dwellings.
I have spoken to so many people about the Strata Titles Act, and they all say to me, Mr. de Horst, it is a minefield.
Yeah, it's not.
Nobody understands the Strata Titles Act.
It's not a good system.
Now here we have a letter.
Individual titles, that's it, and no connection between. No.
Here I have a letter from Senator Ross Lightfoot, who was in Parliament with Richard Court, the Liberal government. He was the only politician.
Upper House member.
Yeah, he was the only politician that was prepared to assist me. He also went to his girlfriend at that stage, Julie Bishop.
Oh, okay.
Julie Bishop was a lawyer with Clayton and Utz.
Yep.
And had my case investigated. He writes to me, "Dear Mr. Horst, having read the latest copies of correspondence, I'm concerned there has indeed been a miscarriage of justice that would appear not to be of your making. That is not to say that I can accurately indicate with whom the blame should lay or be apportioned. However, it does seem that with respect to yourself, you are prima facie devoid of the genesis of the problems, or significantly so, that have arisen as a result of rezoning and other anomalies. The result of those problems are manifestly serious." Ross Lightfoot. He was then called a loose cannon by the Liberal Party because he was assisting people like Jan de Horst. They then moved him to. They then moved Senator Lightfoot to Canberra. He then became a senator.
Yeah, and
now his assistant, I had most of the dealings with by phone. Her name, I found out afterwards. I didn't know who she was, and I told her. I said that George Cash and Mrs. Edwards have instigated action against me on behalf of the people that built on my land and Landgate to get through the courts fake titles and fake transfers. And I accused George Cash and Mrs. Edwards of being part of this scandal. She then became very aggressive over the phone, and she said, "How dare you? George Cash is my father."
Yes, and the worker's name is...
I then told...
Well, have you got the document there?
I then told them that I was going to enlarge. I didn't say enlarge. I said I'm going to blow up this document and I'm going to sit in front of Parliament House with it in public. She then contacted the police and said I was going to blow up something. I was a threat to a parliamentarian. The police wouldn't say who it was. The police turned my house upside down for 2 days looking for firearms and bullets and ammunition. I didn't have any. They confiscated some antique firearms and kept them for over a year.
Are you going to provide the name of the worker? Yeah, what's the lady's name?
Which lady?
The lady that said that's my father.
Oh, well, this lady, as I said, she was the secretary of Ross Lightfoot, and when I started accusing George Cash and Mrs. Edwards, the Attorney General, she said, "How dare you? George Cash is my father." Yeah. So her name is Cash, Natalia Cash, who's now taken the position of Ross Lightfoot as a senator in Canberra.
It's Michaelia Cash. She's a senator of Western Australia.
Exactly.
So that was over the telephone.
Over the telephone.
That Michaelia Cash said that to you over the telephone.
That's right.
And
she then contacted the police and told them that I threatened a politician. The police wouldn't tell me who I threatened. They turned my house upside down for 2 days. I was surrounded by police cars and they couldn't find anything, so they took my antique firearms, which all they had to do was check the computers and see that it was all licensed on their computer.
Well, I know Michaelia Cash,
yeah.
but the issue exploded because she got upset because it was her father, George Cash. So if you can be specific with the public about the role that George Cash played, what is it specifically that you have difficulty in regards to Mr. Cash?
Well, George Cash George Cash, through the Attorney General, Mrs. Edwards, instructed Crown Law, Robert Koch, who was a Crown Law solicitor, instructed them to act on behalf of the people that built on my land and Landgate and get the fake titles and fake transfers through the courts while I was in jail. And
Jesus
the transfers...
Christ. George Cash did that to Mr. Horst while he was in jail.
Yeah. I've got the
How
letters.
disgusting.
Yeah, I've got the
How,
letters.
that's total corruption.
And the
And
transfers,
you've got, what? You've got...
the transfer states,
Have you got evidence for that? You've got evidence for that?
oh yes, the transfer states that I, Jan ter Horst, hereby consent, but my signature is not on it. Somebody at the courts signed on my behalf.
So somebody signed a document to transfer your title while you were in jail.
Yeah.
But someone else signed it. Do you know who signed it?
Well, they didn't sign my name, they signed their own name.
Yeah, but do you know who it was?
Yes, I've got the document.
You've got the document,
Piles
okay.
and piles and piles.
Alright, so hang on a minute, let's just read that. A judge, who was the judge that threw you in jail?
I think it was either Stidler or Sadler. I can't remember exactly, I have to check the documents.
Okay,
I've
so
got the documents here somewhere. But
Stidler
I've got
or
piles
Sadler,
and piles and
the
piles.
judge throws you in jail and George Cash fabricates all these documents, or
Through the court,
through
on,
the court.
on behalf of Land Gates.
District Court or Supreme Court?
District Court.
District Court, and then somebody in the government, a lawyer or somebody else? You were
No, they
signed
didn't sign my name. You signed the court official signed on
okay, so the
on
court.
my behalf,
Okay, the
but
court.
not my name.
Okay, the court official signed the document to transfer your land
Yeah.
while you were in jail.
Yes, but the letter states, I, Jan ter Horst, hereby consent.
Yeah.
Now, if I consent
So
to something,
the document said that you consented.
yes, there are two transfers that I got in my possession, and they were done illegally through the courts. And
It said that you consented to the transfer, but
and-
you were in jail and
Yeah,
somebody
I-
else signed the
I
document.
was in jail, and it says, I, Jan ter Horst, hereby consent, and somebody else signed on my behalf.
Yeah.
If I consent to something, it should have my signature on it.
Yeah,
But it
done to
didn't.
you while they threw you in jail.
Now,
How,
this
how
is-
much more corruption? How much more corrupt does that get? You know.
Now this is a letter from DOLA, Land Administration, which is now called Landgate. This came from Mr. Mulcahy, the Commissioner of Titles, the 11th of January 95. And it's got here, refusal to produce certificate of title, volume 1388, folio 326, Jan ter Horst. I refer to previous correspondence concerning the above. I have reviewed this matter to determine whether I should institute legal proceedings against Mr. ter Horst under the provision of section 76 and 77 of the Transfer of Land Act 1893. Having regard to the fact that Mr. ter Horst is now in contempt of court order made by Her Honour Judge Kennedy,
Okay.
and that he is likely to be jailed in the near future, if that has not already occurred, I consider it is appropriate to wait until the end of January 95 to establish whether Mr. ter Horst has changed his position in relation to refusing to produce the certificate of title after he has had some time in gaol, in jail.
Jail, yeah. So he's threatening you with jail over a document.
Yeah.
And ended up jailing you because of.
I have requested that my legal officer, Mr. Bruce Roberts, resubmit the matter to me for further consideration at the end of January 95. If you have any queries in relation to the matter raised above, then please contact Mr. Bruce Roberts. This is Mr. Mulcahy, who was a Commissioner of Title. He then resigned, his deputy resigned, and Mr. Mulcahy is now Commissioner of Titles in New South Wales.
What was, can I just clarify George Cash's position at the time that when he instructed the...
He was the Minister for Land.
Minister for Lands. He was the State Minister for Lands.
From the Liberal Party.
In the West Australian Parliament.
That's correct.
Yeah. And he was a lower house member?
Yes.
For which seat? Do you remember the seat?
I think it was Lower House. I'm pretty sure it was Lower House. And the Attorney General was Miss, what's his name?
Cheryl Edwards.
Cheryl Edwards was the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And both those people were interviewed by Richard Utting on ABC Radio. I have the transcript of ABC Radio, and when you read the whole transcript from the ABC Radio, they were conspiring against me. Richard Utting,
Yeah, well, it definitely.
George Cash, and Mrs. Edwards, they conspired against me. They interviewed all my adversaries. They did not interview any of my colleagues, any of my supporters.
Yeah.
Now, Richard
and you were
Utting,
in jail at this point.
I was in jail,
And they did all this while they had after they had thrown you in jail for 91 days.
And Richard Utting is a criminal lawyer, and as a presenter of the ABC, should have interviewed both sides.
Of course, that's
And
objective.
he did not interview or ask any of my supporters to come on ABC Radio.
So providing biased media on the issue.
Exactly.
Because proper journalism is objective, impartial, non-biased. Of course you have to get both sides of the story. That's journalism. But if it's not, if you don't do that, that's actually just propaganda.
Yeah.
Really.
And I have been told that Mr. Thompson or Mrs. Thompson, who now live on the property, are related to Richard Utting.
The people that own that property are related to Richard Utting.
That's what I've been told.
And what's Richard Utting's position?
Well, he was a criminal lawyer.
He was a
And he
criminal
was
lawyer.
a presenter at ABC Radio. His name is on my building, and I wrote on the building that he conspired against me on ABC Radio. Now, he's a criminal lawyer. Why hasn't he taken me on? Why hasn't he taken me to court for defamation or whatever?
Well, because they already threw you in jail, so they already made you suffer, didn't they? That's what they did. So, but there are actual laws, corruption laws, and people that pervert the course of justice. There is under the criminal code, it's 7 years imprisonment for corruption.
That's correct.
7 years imprisonment for corruption. If I'll just finish this little bit because it's important. So it's people, you're saying conspiring, but the evidence is actually
collusion.
Well, it's what they did. It's actually what they did behind your back. They threw you in jail and then they did all this stuff behind your back. That is corruption. It is.
Now this
makes you suffer over your own property.
This is a letter from Colleen Egan. She was from the West Australian, isn't it?
Colleen Egan, of April.
Yes, this is from the Australian.
What's the date?
The 11th of April 95.
1995.
By Colleen Egan. And it says, a man's fight for view cost 91 days in jail. The West Australian man has spent what is believed to be the longest incarceration for contempt of court in Australia, all because he wanted a clear view of the Indian Ocean. Well, that's making it sound very simple. It's not as simple, it's a lot more complicated. Jan de Horst spent 91 days in prison after failing to surrender to the district court a duplicate certificate of land title for the block he sold several years ago. He emerged from the court last Thursday, frail and weak, after 5 weeks on hunger strike in jail. This is justice in Australia, Mr. de Horst said outside the court. 91 days of jail. That is what I had to go through to protect my ocean views. Mr. de Horst has refused to accept the ruling against him in the District Court and the Supreme Court over the dispute with the Fremantle City Council, which allowed the new owners of the block which adjoins his house to exceed a height restriction by 4 house bricks. This is not correct. The blocks, and one block is 2 bricks, so it should be 8 house bricks or 650 mil. After lost court cases, hunger strikes, campaigns outside the West Australian Parliament, dating from 91, Mr. de Horst was jailed indefinitely in January for contempt of court by replacement land title to be issued and to be delivered to the District Court registrar instead of to Horst, that his release was ordered.
They ordered your release.
In challenges of validity of contempt jailing, when the defendant is unlikely to buckle in the court, Chief Justice Hammond acknowledged on Thursday that he had no choice but to release de Horst without him having purged the contempt. If de Horst stays in prison until the end of next century, he is not going to apologise or purge the contempt. And he is certainly not going to hand over the title. I still have the original title, Judge Hammond said. It has been sufficient time, Judge Hammond said, unsatisfied with the case resolution, had stern words for Mr. de Horst and his supporters, who have acted as his advocates. I can say to Jan de Horst, you receive no support from me, and any sympathy you have received from others has been entirely misplaced, Judge Hammond said, ordering all costs against Mr. de Horst. His lawyer, Michael Hardy, of Clayton and Utes, said outside the court, as a participant in the legal system, the problem arose simply because he was not willing to cooperate. The whole system crumbles when people do not comply. It throws the administration of justice into disarray.
Well, you know what? That is because it is not about justice. It is about control.
Well, if somebody
Politicians control citizens and judges control citizens. And that lawyer said, if you don't comply,
yes,
they throw you in jail. Now that judge has no compassion for you, no sympathy, but he's able to throw you in jail over a document. Now why wouldn't you hand over that duplicate document?
Because the building doesn't conform with planning approval, and the building does not conform with the strata plan and the height restriction.
Yeah, that's right. So they
somebody,
didn't follow their rules.
If
so
somebody
you wouldn't hand over the document and the judge threw you in jail.
If somebody is going to put a rope around my neck, am I going to allow them to do it? Am I going to cooperate and let them do it?
No.
The building is illegal.
Yeah.
It doesn't conform with planning approval, and it doesn't conform.
And there's a lot of people who have said support you. You've got a list of people who...
I've got a list of 25 people that support me, and they're all professional people.
Okay, so you had a lawyer and you had a barrister QC, and what was his role?
What?
The barrister QC.
Well, he was arguing the case in court.
For you?
For me.
And what was his name?
Michael O'Sullivan.
Michael O'Sullivan. WA's newest judge, Michael O'Sullivan QC Centre, was welcomed to the bench of the District Court yesterday by colleagues Chief Judge Desmond Heenan and Judge Kevin Hammond, who said 1994? 1994. But before that, he was helped...
Before I was still...
before he became a judge?
Before my jailing, this was.
This was before your jailing?
I was jailed in 95.
So he was one of your lawyers?
He was my barrister QC.
And that was before he became a judge, obviously, yeah? And what was his role in all this?
He was defending my case in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and he said everything will be alright, everything will be okay.
Yes.
And he charged you how much money?
I think it was about 20,000, I think.
$20,000, and he charged you $20,000.
Could have been more.
Now, did he help you?
No, as far as I'm concerned, my solicitor and my barrister QC were totally incompetent.
They took your money.
Negligent.
They took your money and then they just...
Well, between the two of them, it was about 40,000, 50,000.
Okay, well, between the two of them, who was the other lawyer? 40 to $50,000.
Weiss and Patrick.
Weiss and Patrick.
Weiss and Patrick was my lawyer. Michael O'Sullivan was my QC, barrister QC. And they were both incompetent, negligent. I told them to double check everything, check the balances, check and balances with all my contracts, my strata plan, statute law. They told me to mind my own business more or less, and there was no need. There was no need for it.
No, but they take your $50,000.
Yeah.
And they didn't get justice for you, did they?
They did not get.
They allowed you to be thrown in jail. And then they made this man a judge of the district court.
That's right.
You see, it's just a big game for them, and it's the same people controlling our parliament and controlling our courts, the same very tiny small group of people, for nearly 2 million people, the whole state, and the citizens never get justice. they get oppressed, treated like rubbish, thrown in jail for promoting a democracy and freedom and fighting for your property rights. This council is trying to do the same thing to me, Fremantle Council, because I've got signs on my front fence on Winterfold Road in Hilton promoting democracy and freedom, the West Australian Party. And the reason why I'm doing it is because of this sort of thing, and because they are destroying the education system, and I'm an experienced teacher. I can't work in the classroom anymore because they destroy teachers' rights, authority and status, and they allow principals just to sack you. They are imposing a system of indoctrination. I have to build this political party, and now the government, the council, is going to prosecute me on the 27th of June for promoting democracy and freedom, when there are property rights that I have, and a High Court decision in 1992. Here's a letter from Julie Bishop, because they did the same thing to her in Netherlands, is that right?
Yeah,
the Netherlands Council tried to do the same thing to her in 2000.
But that did not proceed.
No, because somebody stepped in for her and helped her.
She had a barrister.
A barrister.
I can't think of the name. I'd like to go to here. This is my
okay.
barrister.
This is a letter. Later.
This is a letter of my barrister, Michael O'Sullivan, to my solicitor, St Patrick. This letter was from Law Chambers, Cathedral Square, Perth. The date is the 13th of March 1992. Regarding Mr. Horst, I refer to my meeting with Mr. Patrick today, at which we discussed the future conduct of this matter. I confirm that Mr. Horst did not attend the conference despite a request from you that he should do so. I can't remember that. I further confirm that Mr. Horst wishes me to consider whether an attempt should be made to adduce fresh evidence on the hearing of the appeal. As I have explained to Mr. Patrick, I do not think that this will be possible. But I had hoped to meet with Mr. Horst to discuss and investigate the matter in some detail before providing advice in this regard. Whether or not fresh evidence can be tendered on appeal, I remain reasonably confident of success in any event. I also confirm your advice that you are at present without funds from Mr. Horst. No money. And in those circumstances are reluctant to continue to instruct me. And I think that I should make it quite clear, for the benefit of all parties, that in the absence of your clear instructions or money, I am not briefed to advise further connections with this matter, or to represent your client on the hearing of the appeal. I would of course be happy to continue to act, but only upon proper basis and upon clear instructions. In other words, money.
And who wrote, oh sorry, keep going.
That is from the QC. If I am to continue to be involved in this matter, I would be grateful if you would again arrange a conference between Mr. Horst and Mr. Patrick and myself to provide me with written instructions to continue to act as counsel. You will of course not be in a position to do this until appropriate arrangement for payment of fees have been made with your client. Money is very important. It's always money, money, money.
It's always money. And who, oh, keep going.
I confirm that I have the appeal books and the other material which I have continued to hold onto until I hear from you. Yours faithfully, Michael O'Sullivan. Michael O'Sullivan is now a judge at the district court. As far as I'm concerned, he and the lawyer were incompetent, negligent, and let me down.
Well, how much money had you given them at that point?
I think altogether about 50,000, 50,000.
About $50,000.
Well, here he was demanding $10,000.
And then demanding $10,000 more.
On a Monday. No, that was in between.
So just
That was for the Supreme Court case.
taking all your money and then letting the aid judge throw you in jail. Here's the letter. M.D.F. O'Sullivan. Wise and Patrick, barristers and solicitors. Hopefully they can see that on the thing. 17th of March 1992.